Welcome to the art of paper weaving, direct instruction for visual arts. To begin with, let us introduce some essential weaving terminology. Weaving is the process of forming cloth or fabric on a loom by interlacing yarn or thread, or as in this case, paper. Loom, a frame for weaving art or thread into cloth or fabric. Warp, threads running lengthwise on the loom. The warp is placed on the loom prior to beginning the weaving process. Weft, threads that are weaved across the warp threads to form the web. Web, the cloth or fabric produced by weaving. Color, balance, emphasis, pattern, and unity by cutting a folded sheet of black paper and weaving colored strips of construction paper to make a woven two-dimensional design. By 6 piece of paper. Fold paper in half, hamburger style. Using a ruler, draw a line on the open, not folded side of the paper, about 1 centimeter from the end. Students will cut to, not past, this line. Create a series of cuts starting on the fold all the way to the pencil line. Cuts can be straight, slanted, wavy, etc., and this will create the warp strips. Unfold your piece of paper to reveal your paper loom. Cut strips of paper to create weft strips to weave into your paper loom. You will weave these in following an A-B pattern. Over one warp string, under the next, over, then under, etc. And here's a side note, weft strips do not have to be identical. You can make them straight, wavy, different sizes, etc. And once you have woven in one weft strip, you will begin weaving your second strip directly below your first. When you weave this strip in, be sure to start opposite of the way you began the first strip. For example, my first strip began over, so my second should begin under. Continue weaving until completed. If you choose to cut your weft strips in any kind of wavy or zigzag pattern, be sure to keep them in the correct order. Arrange them like a puzzle so that pieces fit perfectly next to each other when woven together. Hello, this is Mr. C. Rain, and I'm here to talk to you about the lesson, The Art of Paper Weaving, and I'm going to give you a brief demonstration of the steps that we just saw in the previous overview of examples. And when you're finished with your project, if you follow all the steps correctly in the lesson, you will produce a piece very similar to this. And of course, students may choose their own colors and designs, but they need to follow the basic steps. And the first part of it is to take a black sheet of paper and fold it in two. And then you will be making cuts from the fold that make lines like this. And I'll quickly demonstrate here. You can make your cuts wavy or straight. There's all kinds of ways that you can actually cut this to make some very interesting patterns. And if this is done correctly, the cuts come from the fold and stop before you reach the edge of the paper. If you cut too far, you're just going to end up with black strips of paper that you can't use. Now, if it's helpful, you may take a ruler and after you fold the paper, draw a line maybe a half an inch from the edge of the paper to show yourself where to stop cutting if that's necessary. Although as students get more skilled with this, it won't be so necessary to draw on the line. But then once you've cut your sheet correctly, okay, you'll have the warp strands that run horizontally, and once they're cut all the way through, you'll have something like this, with which you can begin to do the weaving process. And now the weaving process consists of taking your weft strips, and those are the strips that run vertically, and cutting them out. And the way I like to do it is stack up the sheets of color paper that I'm using, and then that way when I cut out all the strips, I have strips that are all of about the same size and width, and then they'll fit together when I actually start weaving it into the loom. Now the loom is the total sheet of black paper, and the warp are the strips that run horizontally, and the weft are the strips that run vertically. Now, if everything it's woven in correctly, it's in an over, under, over, under kind of pattern. And for each strip you weave in, it has to be woven in the reverse pattern from the previous one. Otherwise, if you weave the strips in all in the same direction, the whole piece isn't going to hold together. So when you've woven in a new strip like that, it makes more of like a variegated checker pattern, as you can see. And so here I started over, went under, and started weaving it over again. So every weft strip is woven in the reverse of the previous strip. And then when you're finished, once again, your result will look like that. And if everything is woven in correctly, it will hang together and have cohesion. And then the only bit of gluing that you will need to do is at the top and the bottom of each strip. And all you need is a small bead of glue to hold everything in place, and then it is quite sturdy once you have a total web. Now, if you cut incorrectly, you'll end up with something like this. And what the student did incorrectly is, instead of cutting from the folded crease of the paper, they cut from the edge. So when they had it like this, they cut from the outside inwards. And what this results in is a sheet of paper that you can't weave anything into because there's nothing to hold it in with these loose flappy pieces. And so that, my friends, is a quick demo, an overview of all of the steps that you will follow in this lesson in paper weaving. And of course, you can take this lesson and run with it and create lots of interesting patterns if you follow all the steps correctly. And this type of weaving also lends itself to optical art, which would be a more advanced phase of paper weaving involving more complex weaving and patterning. But that is the lesson on paper weaving for today. Hope you enjoyed it, and have a good day.